Okay, let's do another brief overview of another Carlsen game. So playing black this time against Alexander Morozevich, who I witnessed once actually at Lloyd's Bank Masters many years back. He mopped up the field 9.5 out of 10. I think he was only about 18 years old. And then I think the next year or the previous year there was Shirov as well. It was a real joy to watch these players in real life at work, just demolishing other GMs, just GM after GM, you know, collapsing. It seems to almost like hack attack style, very exciting style of Morozevich. So here is white. Okay, he kicks off with d4, and Magnus chooses the Nimzo-Indian defense. So on the black side now, Magnus, knight c3, again inviting the Nimzo-Indian defense, named after Aaron Nimzovich, one of the leading hypermodernists. So directly influencing the center already. Pressure on e4. Okay, queen c2. So Morozevich is also sharing Carlsen's queen c2 move, which was a favourite of Kasparov. d5 and only d5. Okay. Now we see c takes d. Okay, e takes d. So black may be looking forward to e-file pressure later on. White looking forward to c-file pressure, maybe c7 as a target. Bishop g5. The bishop is immediately kicked by Magnus. And it looks like the opening of this game looks very forcing now with this continuation we're about to see from Magnus. We see c5, very sharp. Okay, d takes c would seem to be asking for trouble with d4, but okay, white plays d takes c5 anyway, but d4 there's always the pin maybe, or castling queenside, so it's not clear cut. Okay, now we see g5, and now a rather direct increase in pressure with knight e4, putting more pressure on c3. And of course the knight vacating f6 means maybe queen f6 is also on the cards, hitting not just c3 but f2 is a vulnerable point. Morozevich plays e3, and now we see more pressure on c3. And okay, rook c1. But black is not. Isn't black looking kind of overextended? It's another really profoundly strange game from Magnus in this tournament. That you look at his play, and sometimes it just looks like a beginner is playing at a certain level of perception. You know, all the weakening moves. I mean, it looks very, very committal, this to play as black. And what is going on here? Had Magnus banked on something like queen takes a2, he played knight d7, but let's imagine queen takes a2. I think this was mentioned actually on chessgames.com, and someone had simply said, I believe that it might be possible for white to put a lot of pressure on black's position here with a simple move like king d1. That would be unpinning and threatening the queen. If the queen moves back, then there's knight takes e4. A move like this, if we get the queens off, if we have to get the queens off, let's imagine. Is this any good? Or maybe white had stronger. In this position, okay, knight takes c5, possibly that's okay, that's, I don't know. If we go back to the main line and have a look at queen takes a2 again, maybe there's something stronger here. Maybe knight ge2 or bishop e5 first. Intriguing. It's worth a technical analysis, maybe, of this position. Okay, let's move on from that. This is only a brief overview. So knight d7, but it seems after knight ge2, knight takes, a3, we're going to have a massive exchanges. And where does this leave Magnus's position? It's strange. We're talking the #1 highest FIDE rated player in the world with this position where he has an isolated queen's pawn. White has the bishop pair. White has c7 access potentially, or c-file. White seems to have all the trump cards here one could hope for from this system. It certainly looks a great deal more comfortable and beneficial than the previous Nimzo-Indian game we've done an overview of. Just what is going on here? b4 is ready to evict the knight. So knight e4. Okay, Magnus picks up the dark square bishop at some cost. A rook on the 7th. And I saw this game during the live relay. I just thought, what is this? This is just total torture now. With that rook on the 7th. The domination of the c-file. Is this not just torture? 2 rooks are going to arrive on the 7th soon. And I just thought, surely White is cruising this. How does Black withstand the pressure here? I really was shocked at what was going on later, as we were about to see. So bishop d3, fine so far. The king might have the opportunity to walk on dark squares. This a5, is it on sprawl with b5 maybe? Maybe that's an option. Instead b takes a5 was played. Maybe b5 is a viable option. Just to try and make sure Black's rooks don't have too much counterplay. But okay. The rook doesn't have an enormous amount of counterplay on the a file in this structure. The bishop is still tied down. The rook is still tied down. Wow. I mean, who would have imagined this? Isolated queen's pawn? Many of us would like White here, surely. We can walk on the dark squares. We can put more pressure on Black, surely. Rook a8. Magnus is one of his trademark ideas, reversing pieces back to the original squares. King c3. The king is coming in, but goes to b4, not to d4. Is that a little strange? Why not go to d4? Maybe there's a big reason for not going to d4. Maybe this pawn is a bit of a menace. If we can knock out these two, then this pawn is dangerous. Or try for this, then this pawn can be targeted. g2 and then the h pawn. I saw this potential counterplay actually at this stage. I thought this must be the only plan for Black to get out of this position, because he's so tied down here. I just couldn't believe it. This position. Everyone really thought Magnus is going to lose this. Surely Morozevich can put this position away. But king b4, okay. Maybe, maybe king d4 was deemed not as effective. What's the idea? Okay, we'll follow the idea of king b4. So h4, okay. And I think this looks intuitively to be a strange move. But look at the clock times here, 13 minutes. And he spent a long time on this to go down to 4:48. This is on the relay for the clocks. Huge amount of time to play rook e8. Maybe he just didn't find it easy, this position. One of the sort of things Magnus has at his disposal is, of course, the sack b7. To play a move like bishop e6 at some point. And then an astonishing idea of d4 and bishop d5 to knock this guy out. If this guy can be knocked out, this pawn's going to be really dangerous. So maybe, White saw rook e8 as a more concrete way of approaching the position here. But now, it's like, where did White's binds go? Black is playing this idea of playing for d4 now. If the king had been a blockader on d4, this of course would not be possible. But now it is possible. And now we have this potentially dangerous h-pawn if this guy's knocked out. And also we have rook g8. It's like the tables have been turned and white is under pressure now from previously an enormous bind on the position with two rooks on the 7th, a king on d4, all the trump cards we could possibly dream of having from this opening. And now look at this. It looks as though white's on the back foot. Okay. Bishop takes c4, another surprise move here. I think many people were surprised, but rook takes c4 was played. Is there a big problem with king takes c4, allowing the rooks off? Maybe. Takes, let's imagine king here, or maybe not. Is it some sort of king and pawn ending zugzwang position? If f5. Is it just an unlucky position, this? Let's say king here. Whoops. This should be okay. Is white seeing ghosts? This is just a brief analysis. I don't know, but people, I remember, were surprised that king takes c4 wasn't played. So rook takes c4, just giving up the g2 pawn, and now this dream pawn from earlier is now a harsh reality. The rook has to try and get behind it to manage it. And Magnus is all of a sudden looking very well here in this rook and pawn ending. Somehow white is making use of his f-pawn. Whoops, sorry about this. I'll just try and take off my challenge preferences. So king e2, f4. So we've got this passed pawn. And it seems here we go into a draw after all that. There's a lot of drama in this draw, one has to say. A lot of drama in this draw, because it seems as though I really thought, and I think many people did during the live broadcast, that Morozevich had this one in the bag. What other trump cards can you possibly dream of having from this opening? From what he had. And there's this big question. This would be nice where computer analysis would check queen a2 here. Maybe that I just heard king d1 was a move, but I don't know. There might be something stronger. If we just briefly touch on this again, let's just try and briefly touch on this again. Knight takes c3. Is there any other move here apart from b takes? There's no check or anything. There's no bishop b5. Or was there a bishop b5 check here first? We can slip in a bishop b5. Would that do any good? Instead of king d1. Possibly. Okay, that's interesting to check out technically. I hope someone can leave comments about that, some variations there. But it seems where we went up to here was Magnus got just a really, really bad position from the opening. And it's absolutely incredible, really, how, okay, we have the double pawns here, and in theory, yes, we've got this potential kind of passed pawn, but you know, a very, very strong GM is playing with white with all these other trump cards. Surely, you know, that doesn't balance the position. Does that really balance the books for black when white has the blockade on d4, the rook's on the 7th? Are the books really balanced here with this passed pawn potential? If g2 is the target here to knock out to make this a reality, it seems this was the case, because black always has the resource of b7. In practice, it was the case for what happened, that Magnus managed to draw this. People think, you know, is Magnus lucky in this tournament to win it? He had 2 wins and the rest draws. And this is one of his sort of most dodgy draws, one could say. I mean, the previous one was pretty dodgy as white as well. But I thought this one, in terms of risk, was even higher. I mean, what about these lucrative options of king d4? Just put a stop on d4 forever and torture black forever. But he was getting short of time. Is it because Magnus is a practical player? If we rewind from here and look at the clock's times for a moment, Magnus is playing the moves all pretty quickly. He always had a big clock advantage throughout this game, if we look at this clock consumption. 45.53, and then white was just getting into time pressure. So maybe this is part of the secret. You know, putting the opponent continually under pressure in multiple dimensions, not just the ball position, but the clock situation, and the potential, you know, for huge passed pawns being generated. Just knock out all the obstacles of passed pawns. G2 was the key one in this game. Okay, and it seems to just balance out. I think it seems for Morozevich, by the way, the tournament took a really downward spiral after he was leading it comfortably. He's an absolutely brilliant player. Somehow, I don't know, somehow is he getting slightly over-optimistic from certain positions, like against Nakamura? That was the game which, it was the decisive game. It was the game which maybe started his downward spiral, but this one could cause some sleepless nights as well. Comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks very much.